What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. You catch me sitting in my Mk4 Ford Fiesta van, which I recently purchased back in April of this year. It cost me the grand total of £700, and with that I got a fairly rust-free Fiesta. It had MOT and just overall general condition is really good. Now, the only real downsides that the bloke put in the advert when I purchased the car was that it's got a diesel leak. So this is the 1.8 diesel engine, and basically when you park it up it would leave 2 or 3 drips of diesel on the floor, nothing major. And the seller was very honest about this. He said someone's tried to bodge it up before. They've put some araldite and tin foil underneath the fuel pump to try and fix it, but it still drips ever so slightly. But during my ownership, the leak has got even worse, and yeah, it's got to the point where I'm not happy driving it at all now. So I'm just going to show you guys the symptoms. Right, the first symptom is when I go to start it in the mornings, it takes a long time to start. Obviously, let the glow plug light go out. I mean, that was fairly quick, but it normally takes about 5 to 10 seconds to start up. It doesn't start up on the button. Now, I've just started up the van and left it idling, but as you can see already, it's dripping quite a lot. Now, this has got progressively worse during my ownership, and as I say, now I really don't feel comfortable driving it on the roads. And as you can see there, I haven't even had the van running a minute and it's already leaking quite a lot of diesel onto the floor. So as you can all see and probably agree, that leak is very excessive. It's coming out drip after drip, and I'm not happy with it. I've taken the van straight off the road and we're going to get it sorted in this video. Now, just before we start, I would like to mention that I replaced the start motor on the van 2 weeks ago, and I think that failed due to the fuel pump leaking. It leaks very close to where the starter motor sits, and yeah, I think that prematurely went because it was having fuel dripped onto it constantly. Either way, we're going to be changing the fuel pump in this video, and while we're there we're going to change the timing belt as well, and more than likely the water pump. So yeah, big job on the 1.8 Endura diesel engine. Let's get straight to it. So I've just opened the bonnet, and down here we've got our fuel pump. There's a lot of stuff attached to it, including the throttle cable, and we've got all of the outlets for all the fuel lines. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff attached to it. As we come around here, that's where the sprocket for the fuel pump will sit, behind that plastic casing. We've obviously got all the engine mount in the way and the timing belt covers. So yeah, all of this area needs to be stripped out. The first job to do is to get it jacked up. We'll get this offside front wheel off because we'll be working in this area, and then I'll catch up with you guys in a minute. Try not ruin these hubcaps even more. I do have a new set of these actually. Also spent some of my pocket money the other day, got some new DeWalt guns. Got these at work, but these are for personal use now. Obviously I've got the wrong socket. Back with the right socket. It's a 19, not a 17. Right, there we go. So I've started to strip down the Fiesta. What I've done is remove the wheel. I also removed the bit of plastic trim here, took off the aux belt, and as always, I just like to do this. Do a little drawing of your aux belt, saves you messing about, trying to put it in the wrong way when you refit it. And what else I've done is I've removed the engine mount off of this side. So yeah, that's all come off, and I'm just having a look. What I'm gonna have to do next is the alternator, which is down there. I've got to remove that, and then I'll start to try and get all of these plastic casings off. It doesn't seem too buried, if I'm completely honest. It's going to be the fuel pump and all of the bits that go on it that will be a little bit more challenging. As you can tell, the daylight is rapidly fading. It gets darker like 4 o'clock now. Really not fun, but we keep moving on. I've removed the auxiliary belt tensioner, which was just two 10mm bolts, and I've also just disconnected the alternator, took both of the terminals off, and I've just removed the 3 13mm bolts. So I'm just going to try and get that down from there. I know you've been in there since 1999, but you got to come out for now, mate. There we go. Come on, just a little bit further. Right, there is one very oily, well, it's actually probably not oil, it's diesel. There's been dripping on it for a while. That's one diesel saturated alternator. Still works though, just needs a good old clean. Now I just need to remove the auxiliary belt crank pulley, and then behind that will be the timing belt crank sprocket. So yeah, let's remove the couple of 10mm nuts that holds that on, and then I'll try and get this cover off. As you can see, it's now the next day. I've got off all of the cam cover pieces, so it's actually in 3 sections. I took these to work today and gave them a clean up. They came up like brand new, and something that's really cool is it even says the date that they were made, May 1999 apparently. So yeah, that's really cool. I also cleaned up the other section of plastic trim which basically guards the bottom of the crank pulley and the auxiliary belt. So now I've got all of the covers off, I can see that there's actually 2 cam belts. So there's a lower one which just drives the diesel pump, and then the other one drives the top and the bottom of the engine along with the water pump. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is whip off the cam cover, not too many bolts holding that on, because I need to time up the engine. Once I've done that, I'll catch up with you guys and I'll explain how I'm timing this up. Right, so to lock up the bottom half of the engine, the crankshaft, I had to remove this big aluminium bracket which the alternator sits on. Now as we come up here, this is where the bracket used to sit, and I'll just put an arrow to the locking pin. Now this locking pin is 43mm in length, I believe. So it's just over 4 centimeters, and it just screws in there and locks the crank in place. I do believe you can use a drill bit, but I wouldn't put a drill bit into the block personally. I'd get the correct locking tool. As we move up to the top of the engine, obviously we want to lock up the camshaft as well. So what I've done here is I've used one of my locking tools. Basically this is just a flat bit of metal. It's usually used for twin cams, but this is just a single overhead cam. It doesn't matter. So as you can see, it's just slotted into the camshaft by a couple of mil, and that's keeping that all locked in place. Now the last thing I need to time up is the fuel pump. Even though I'm removing this, it still needs to be timed up to the engine. So basically you've got to get this to about 11 o'clock, and there's a little cutout and you can just fit a 6mm drill bit in there. What I will do, I'll get a better picture and show you guys what it looks like once it's off the van. Now just while I'm at the top of the engine, a quick observation that I've noticed is this. I think that's an old timing belt sticker, I reckon, because this van was built in 1999, so it probably has had a timing belt in its life. Yeah, at the start of the video I said I didn't know whether it had or hadn't, but I reckon this has had a belt, which is all good, but it definitely does need changing. I'll get some close-ups once I've got it off. But where the fuel pump has been leaking, it's caused some contaminants in it, and when the belt has started breaking apart slightly, all the dust has sort of accumulated with the fuel mixed together. It caused like some sludge. I think there's still some under the van. Yeah, if you see down here, this is just sort of accumulated in the camshaft covers, and as the belt has deteriorated, the fuel sort of stuck to it and caused it to gather up, but we're changing it all, so it's all good. Oh, and also something to back up my theory that this belt's already been done is there's Tipex marks, one at the top here, and there's also one down here, so pretty sure it's been done before. But what I will be doing is going over these Tipex marks, because even though the engine is locked up, you can get confused later down the line once you've taken the locking tools out or when you've removed parts, so it's always good. Belts and braces might as well have some markers to go off as well. Plan of attack is to just slacken off this tensioner and I'll be able to get the main belt off, and then we can have a look at removing the belt that drives the fuel pump. Gonna need 2 hands for this, I reckon. Go on. Why work hard when you can work smarter? There we go. I have loosened that tensioner now, so it should come off. There we go. Would you look at that? Normally you have to take the crank sprocket off. There she goes. Right, this is definitely worn, as you can see. It was fitted sort of quite strange because it was hanging off of the sprocket slightly, and as we can see there, it is wearing, or it's all the material sort of shifted over where it's stretched over the years. Yeah, I'm glad I'm changing this. Right, so that is the main cam belt removed. Now we've got just the smaller cam belt that runs the fuel pump. As we can see in the middle there, we've got a tensioner. Now that's tensioned up by a spring and it also sits on a dowel. So what I'll do is I'll remove that and then I'll show you guys how we're going to tension it up when I replace it. Right, let's get this off. Same again, bit of extra leverage. Oh, you could tell that ain't been cracked in a while. There we go. Slackened up. Let's get that off. I should have probably done this before. If you can see that browny sort of rusty colour bit of metal, that is part of what forms the engine mount. It's just held on with 2 10mm bolts, but that's stopping me from getting the tensioner for the fuel pump cam belt off. I'll quickly whip that off, then we'll get the belt out. That turned out to be more of a mission than I thought. I had to remove the cam belt tensioner sprocket and one of the idlers, and I've just removed all 4 of the bolts which hold on this top part of the engine mount bracket. Now it's not going anywhere, I can't actually get it out, but now that I've loosened it, I should be able to wiggle out the tensioner for the other cam belt. There we go, back down here now. As you can see, that bracket is now just that little bit loose. It was sort of butted right up towards it a minute ago, and now we should be able to just pull this off. I say should, but it's quite hard when you're holding the GoPro in one hand and trying to record in the other. It's going though, it's going. There we go, here we go, here it is. As you can see, that is the tensioner and that's the spring. So we'll be keeping them both very safe, but I'm pretty sure we'll get a replacement one of them. And now we can finally remove the lower cam belt. There we go, after a bit of wiggling about and a bit of fighting, we've finally got the second cam belt off. There it is. So that is now 2 cam belts removed. Now I've got both of the cam belts off, that has released the fuel pump, the part that we're actually wanting to change the most. So yeah, I'm gonna start unbolting it, detaching some pipes and that, and we'll try and get it off. So I've seen a bracket that goes onto this fuel pump which is bolted to the block, so I'm gonna leave that till last. I think what I'll do is I'll remove most of the fuel lines. I've also got throttle cable here and yeah, some other pipes to remove. Also, one other thing, when doing a big job like this, what I like to do is take pictures. So I've just taken loads of pictures of fuel pump, because when I'm putting it back together, as good as I like to think my memory is, sometimes you do question yourself, so it's always good to have some pictures so you can go back to them and double check. Okay, so we got somewhere. I've removed all the pipes and the wires like I said I'd do. There was 4 pipes that feed each injector on the back of the pump. Then I had to remove the sprocket, which was just a couple of bolts, and then the actual fuel pump had a bracket at the bottom, and then it also had some bolts going through this metal piece here, which is basically part of the engine moulding, I think. And here we go. It's going to be a bit hard to get out because I need a bit of room at the back. A little bit of wiggling later, and I've just freed up the pump. Have we got anything else attached? No, we haven't. Wow. It's been a minute since I picked up the camera, and it's actually now 2024, so I want to wish everyone a happy new year. Now, the last time I picked up the camera was when I removed the leaky fuel pump, and since then I haven't picked it up for a couple of weeks. Now, the main reason being is I've just been sourcing a pump, so I now understand why the previous owners didn't change this, because it is very, very hard to source one of these fuel pumps. So when I tried looking for one, I rang up all of the parts dealers that I know, and a couple of them could still get some of these pumps, but they were charging £700, £800, and that was a surcharge as well, so I'd have to give them my old one. And then when I popped into another parts company, they said they could actually refurbish my old unit, so I thought we'll go with that. And this is where the trouble starts. So I'll give them my old unit, and they send it to their company that specialise in diesel pumps and rebuilding them, refurbishing them. So I left it with them, left it a couple of weeks, then give them a ring and tried to chase it up, but they still hadn't looked at it. So waited a little bit longer, and then I finally got the call to say that they've looked at the pump and they've diagnosed it. They said that it will cost around £280, £290 plus VAT. And they did also mention that there could be additional charges. So when I questioned them, they said they don't know what the additional charges could be. It just all depends when they go and test the pump, whether there's something else wrong with it or not. And to me, this seemed like quite a bit of a risk to take, because if I paid them, over £300 to refurb it, and then there was more problems with the pump, then I could just be piling more and more money into getting this repaired. I'd much rather them know 100% what's wrong with the pump, then quote me, and then I can decide from there. So yeah, it was a bit of a too much of a risk. Anyway, so once they inspected the pump and told me the bits they thought it needed, I then declined it, and I said no, I'd like the pump back, to be honest, because I actually found one on eBay, and I'll get onto that in a minute. So I got the pump back after another couple of weeks, and only to find, when I opened up the box, it is in a million pieces. I'm not over exaggerating when I mean it's in a million pieces. Look at that. It's literally so many pieces. That's just an old glove there from me, but look, all loads of springs, washers. Oh, I don't even know where half of this stuff goes. So I had a bit of a Karen moment. Now, when I mean Karen moment, it's just basically sort of like a middle-aged lady stereotype when they're sort of having a go at customer services teams. Yeah, I just wasn't happy with that, really, because I gave them the pump in full to inspect and quote me. I'd expect it back, like, built up. So yeah, I was a bit annoyed with that, so I had a little Karen moment, threw a little hissy fit and got my money back, because they wanted £80 to strip that down and inspect it, but then they wanted more money to rebuild it back up, but I wasn't made aware of that until I got it back in pieces. So yeah, that's just been a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. It's back, but it's in a million pieces, but I didn't have to pay for it. So yeah, swings and roundabouts, you got to give and take sometimes. So anyway, with this pump completely written off now, I'm going to forget about that and leave that behind, because what's under this bubble wrap is so much better. So as I say, once I found out that the other pump was going to cost a lot to repair, I decided not to go ahead with a refurb, and I found this pump on eBay. It's the only one that was on eBay that was in the UK, and this is brand new old stock. As you can see there, look, all of the bits are still zinc plated. This is brand new. So I purchased this for £400, which I thought was reasonably priced, considering it was nearly going to cost me that much to refurb my old unit. And down here we've got all of the part numbers. I'll probably whack them on the screen. They are exactly the same as my old pump, so I'm 100% sure this is the right pump for the van. And to be honest, I think I'm quite lucky to get a brand new one, because these are really hard to get hold of now. Also, whilst I was at my part supplier, I picked up a timing belt, so this has got both of the belts in it and the water pump. And I also picked up this rocker cover, or actually it's not, it's a cam cover, as my subscribers will kindly remind me, I'm sure. Yes, this is the cam cover gasket, just like to replace it. Some people might fit the old ones, but for the price it is, it wasn't even a tenner. So yeah, got a new one of them as well. Pretty much the time it's taken when I sent the fuel pump away and got it back, it's been about a month or so, but the weather hasn't been too cold. We haven't had any frosts or anything, and I've made sure that it's all oiled up under this cover. I've had a couple of bottles on top just to make sure it doesn't fly away. But yeah, hopefully today we're going to get it all back together and get the new timing belts on and up and running. One of the main reasons I'm actually annoyed that they gave it back to me in a million pieces isn't because it's broken, it's because I can't now compare both pumps and see if there's the slightest bolt missing or something's twisted around the wrong way or anything like that. Yeah, that's a bit annoying, but luckily I always do things properly. Belts and braces, I've actually taken loads of pictures of the old pump before they stripped it down, so I should be able to tell if there's anything different, but from the photos I've been looking at, I can't see anything different at the moment. But it would just be nice, do you know what I mean, just to have them side by side so I could compare them, but it is what it is. Anyway, I've had my little Monday moan, so let's get started and rebuild this Mk4 Fiesta van. I won't lie to you guys, I've just put the camera down and I've been battling with this section of engine mount. Now it just won't come off. It's in with 4 bolts and it's just stuck in there. And the main reason is because this bolt here, this top one, if you can see where my finger is, it's just buttoned up against the body of the vehicle. But I've just found that there is actually a little hole. Hopefully I'll be able to zoom this in or brighten it up, but there's actually a hole there. So what I've done is I've jacked the engine up to the right position, and now I should be able to wiggle it through that hole. Right, I need to use 2 hands because I've removed the gearbox stabiliser just so I can move the engine back and forth, as you can see. But now I've got it lined up to that hole, pull it forward, and then the bolt goes into that hole. I just won't lose it, and then there we go, out with a long bolt. And now, fingers crossed, this mount should come off. It certainly has fought me the whole way, but it's now out. Honestly, I was that close to not changing the water pump then, but it's just not in me to do that. So yeah, as you can see, these bolts on this side are just so short, but this one is just excessively long. And I'm glad I found that hole, because without that I don't think I would have been getting this mount off without removing the engine. As you can now see, there's loads of room to remove that water pump, which is sitting just up here. So what I'm going to do, I'll remove that now, then I'm going to give this whole section a good clean up, and I'll catch up with you guys. Right, so I've spent quite a while just cleaning up all of the surface where the timing belt sits, and yeah, really happy with the outcome. Weather is a bit hit and miss today. It's sort of on and off showers, but we've got to get cracking. So here is the old water pump, and that's a new one. The new one comes with a gasket and 1 bolt. I don't know why they don't supply 2 bolts, because there's 2 bolts that hold it on. And then the other holes are for where the engine mount sits, and then the bolts for that go through the water pump as well. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get this fitted. And there we go, that's our new water pump in situ. I did actually put this new shiny bolt in the wrong hole over here, but I've swapped that over because I had to double check. now I've fit the water pump, I'm going to leave the engine mount until I've got all the belt and pump on, because I know I can refit that afterwards. So what I'm going to do now is focus on my new pump. There's a few bits that I'm missing, so I've got this bracket complete, but this bottom section it didn't come with, so I'm going to need to unbolt that. And I'm just going to use some of my old photos of the pump to refer back to, like there's a clip up here that I'm going to need to take off, and just a few other bits. So yeah, I'm going to crack on and do that. That's my new fuel pump all ready to go. I swapped over a couple of the brackets, there wasn't too much to swap across. I did have a rummage through the box of my old pump, or what's left of my old pump, and I managed to get out these 3 bolts that hold the pump onto the engine block. And there we have it. That is a fuel pump all completely installed now. I've got all of the gubbins connected. I had a problem with one of these fuel lines, but I managed to sort it now. So yeah, come out of the back of the pump, straight into the injectors. Next up, I'm going to be fitting the new timing belt for the fuel pump. So as you can see here, I've got a brand new tensioner, which came in the Gates timing belt kit. I've had to reuse the old spring, which I'm not too fussed about, but it would have been nice to get a new one of them. As you can see, this is the old tensioner here, and we've got the new timing belt, and obviously using the same sprocket which goes on the fuel pump. I'm just going to go ahead now and fit the sprocket which goes on the ends of my new fuel pump, just held in with 3 10mm bolts. That's the sprocket for the end of the fuel pump put on, and I've just timed it back up into position. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to grab the old fuel pump to show you how I timed it up. Here is my old fuel pump, and as you can see, we want to get this sort of top part, which is cut out, lined up with the hole at the top of the fuel pump. So what I was using previously in this video was a 6mm drill piece. Now this isn't bad, but it does give room for a lot of play. So what I've opted for is I've gone for a 1/4 inch double depth 5mm. Well, this is a 5mm. I've actually got a 6mm in the van at the moment because it fitted nice and snug. But as you can see, that fits in there, and there's hardly no room to move. And yeah, that'll be nice and timed up. I've also got my timing marks, well, my belts and braces timing marks, as we can see down here, my Tipex mark, which is just visible here, and the Tipex mark on the tooth of the sprocket. Now if we come bang on up here, you can see they line up perfectly, so I'm very happy that that's all timed up. Yeah, I can't really stress this enough. It's really, really important to make sure the engine's timed up. Not only because it could cause some damage, but it's just so long-winded. Rushing the job and then finding out the timing's wrong and then having to redo it, it's just not worth the hassle. So make sure you get it spot on first time. I'm just going to go ahead and fit the new tensioner. It sits on this little dowel just there. That's that dowel. And then what we've got is this spring, which sits on the end of this tensioner and on a little recess on the block. Just got to be careful, make sure I actually get them both lined up. Alright, that's the tensioner all fitted. I've just put all the tension I can on that with the end of a a hammer. Right, so that is fully tensioned up. That's got like nothing on the spring, so I'm going to fit the belt, then loosen this off, and hopefully it will tension the belt. Got to make sure you get this on the right way because it is directional, so clockwise. I'll tell you what, a little bit of fiddling about and I've managed to get that sitting spot on. It's nice and tight down the bottom here, and it's going around the crank sprocket on the tensioner and then back up. All I'm going to do now is, if I can find the spanner, I'm going to undo this tensioner slightly, and I'm going to let it put the tension on with that spring. There you go, you would have just seen that spring go on. I'm going to double check up there with a torch to make sure it's in the right recesses. But, oh, wow. Yeah, very, very happy with how easy that installation was. All I'm going to do now is nip up this tensioner. There we go. That is the first timing belt installed. I've fired ahead and I've now got the timing belt all on. So this was slightly tricky to get on. Basically, what you have to do is get all the timing belt on, and then you have to put this tensioner on last. You have to sort of force the belt over and get the bolt in. It's a bit unnerving because it feels like you're going to cross thread the bolt, but if you're careful, you can get it to line up perfectly and get the bolt in. So yeah, that is the timing belt all on. Now, I won't lie, this timing belt has been confusing me slightly. So on this tensioner here, you've got an Allen key mark. Now, this can be at either 6 o'clock or 12 o'clock. It can be anywhere between that range. So I've got mine probably at about 10 o'clock up here. When you tension that up, you then need to slacken off the cam pulley, which will then allow this tensioner to adjust up. This is like an automatic adjuster. So it basically goes off of this adjustment, and as you tighten this up, or as you push it up higher to the top, this cam pulley will turn around with it, only slightly. It won't sort of knock a tooth out or anything, only fractional, you can barely see it, and then this tensioner will then line up. I hope that I explained that quite well. So basically, the more tension you put on this, the cam pulley comes round ever so slightly, and then it pushes more pressure onto this tensioner here. Now, here is the old one, and what you want to achieve is you want it to be pointing at the arrows. Now, this is the old one, so you can't see the arrows, but it should line up like that. As you can see, it's there. As I say, it's not the easiest timing belt to time up, but I have got this adjuster or tensioner completely lined up as it should be now. It was just one of them jobs, really. As soon as you've done it once, you know how it works, but until you've done it, it's just a learning game, really. So yeah, you live and you learn. I do want to give a massive thank you to Stephen. He watches the videos and he sent me some really, really useful diagrams and instructions off of a workshop manual procedure. So yeah, thanks for that, mate. Really, really helps me out. So that is both of the timing belts fully fitted. It is quite hard to sort of see them now. It's getting quite congested again in this section of the engine, but both the belts are on and I've been spinning the engine over for quite some time. It recommends that you turn it over at least 6 times. I've done that, then I've rechecked the automatic tensioner and that's all good. And I've also just done it another 6 times and it's all good. I'm now happy that the timing belt is tensioned up and the engine is completely timed up. All I need to do is start rebuilding it now. Not that there's a lot left to do, but I have just received some goodies from Will at the refinishing shop. Now, these two pieces, the cam cover and this is the alternator bracket, Ali, and he specialises in vapor blasting, so these have come up brand new. I'll try and whack some pictures in what they looked like before, but yeah, he absolutely just works magic on these. Just look at this mount, it was like completely all greased up before and not looking in a good way, but he's made that look brand new again. And the same with this cam cover. It just looks so good. So I just want to give a massive shout out to Will at the refinishing shop. So if any of you guys need your alley brightening up, bringing back into life, make sure to give him a message and tell him that I sent you. So as I say, just going to start to get this all back together now. All the timing tools are out. I've just got to whack the cam cover back on and then just put on all the covers and the engine mount on this side. And then I'll catch up with you guys once I've done all of that. Okay, so the weather has taken a little bit of a turn for the worst and it is now snowing. Yeah, it's snowing, it's not too bad. I'm still cracking on. I've basically got everything back together now and I've just been topping up the coolant. So yeah, got the alternator back on, got all the auxiliary sides back on, and I've put all the covers over the timing belt. So there's not much left to do than try and start it. Yeah, I don't think it's going to start first time. Obviously the fuel pump needs to get some fuel in there, so we'll have to try and prime that with the ignition or just by cranking it. And then we'll just see what it does. Just fingers crossed it's all good, to be honest. As you can see, the Fiesta has got a little bit of snow settling on it, but not a great deal. But yeah, it's all back together now. Obviously I'm working in the dark. It's just what we've got to deal with in the UK. Getting dark at 4 or 5 o'clock isn't fun, but when I'm on a mission like this and I want to get something done, I just go ahead and crack on. I don't want to drain the battery. The thing is, the fuel pump has got no fuel in it and the lines have all drained out, so it's just got to take time to get that fuel up there and into the cylinders again. It is now the next day. It got a little bit too late yesterday and I did flatten the Mk4 Fiesta van's battery, but back at here today. I give it a jump start and I've just bled the fuel system. I basically sucked it all through because it had all drained out. Anyway, long story short, I turned the key, it's fired into life, and yeah, it's up and running. It's a little bit noisy at the moment, not really tappety, just knocky, but I think it's just getting all the air out of the fuel lines, and yeah, I'm just running it up to temperature now. But it didn't take much, just a jump start, and it's fired back into life. And one massive bonus is the fuel pump, the £400 fuel pump that I bought off eBay isn't leaking. So yeah, we've cured the fault, and whilst we were there, we've replaced the timing belts and the water pump as well. So there we have it. It might have taken me a month or so because of the troubles that I was having sourcing a pump and trying to get my old one reconditioned, but the Mk4 Fiesta van is now back up and running, and I couldn't be happier because I've seriously missed this thing. It's so good on fuel. I love bombing it to and from work. It does everything I need it to, and it only cost me £700. Well, it cost me £700 and I just spent bloody 500 quid on it, but I mean, it's still a great van. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this episode on a Mk4 Fiesta van. There is going to be another video coming very soon because I need to change some suspension components, and I've got a CV boot that needs changing as well. Now, if you did enjoy the video, please give it a like, and if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel to see more. Thank you all for watching, and until the next one, I'll see you guys later.